Welcome back, everybody, to Ultimate Rewinds, the podcast focused on everything yesteryear, you could say. We cover movies, we cover TV shows, we cover retro arcades, video games, and of course, we cover sports. Now, we've done a few podcasts focused on sports, New York sports as well, but today I want to talk about my New York Football Jets, and what a better time to talk about this team because we have the NFL season that is right upon us, about 4 weeks away. And of course, we just did our 2026 NFL season preview last week. And today, I want to focus specifically on the top 10 New York Jets draft picks of all time. So we're focusing on draft picks only. This is not a list talking about the greatest New York Jets of all time. This is focusing on their picks. And I hate to say it, but there hasn't been a lot of great picks by this franchise. There are some have been very good and some that have been very mediocre. And we all know about the picks that have been absolutely awful. So we're going to talk about 10 of my favorites. Not only that, we're going to talk about 10 players, where they were drafted, whether low, high, and what they brought to the table throughout their career on the New York Football Jets. So focus on that, where they were picked and what they did with the New York Jets. You guys ready? Before we get into it, I want to do a quick reminder saying to everybody out there, if you're following us over on YouTube, make sure you give us a like, comment down below. And if you are following over on any of the podcast platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podbean, wherever, make sure you give us a 5-star review if you are liking the content that we are putting out. And lastly, guys, if you do have a topic you want us to cover, make sure you email us at ultimaterewinds@gmail.com. With that said, let's get into my number 10 player. So let's start this thing off. At number 10 is one of my favorite football players of all time. I credit this player for actually getting me into watching football, okay? I was born in 1977, but starting watching football maybe around when I was 6 or 7 years old, and that player is none other than Freeman McNeil.
Also threw them for a loop.
Todd hands it off to McNeil, right side. He throws the option pass. Gaffney alone, touchdown! Touchdown, New York Jets!
He was drafted by the New York Jets, 3rd overall in the first round in the 1981 NFL Draft, and he played his entire 12-year career with the New York Jets. Career statistics, listen to this one, folks. Games played, 144. Rushing attempts, 1,798. Rushing yards, he is the second leading rusher for the New York Jets franchise with 8,074 yards. Rushing average, 4.5 yards per carry, which is pretty good over that time frame. Don't forget, this is not today's numbers. This is from the 1980s. Rushing touchdowns, number 38. Receptions, 295. Receiving yards, 2,961 yards. Receiving touchdowns, 12. The man had a total of 50 touchdowns in his career. Now, back then, the evolution of the running back, let's say, didn't really come about receiving-wise until later on in the 90s sometimes. So for him to have nearly 3,000 receiving yards for a running back then was a pretty good deal. In my opinion, again, I loved Freeman. He was the Barry Sanders-esque running back, maybe that second or third level behind Barry. But for the New York Jets, there was no more important player during the early 1980s. Now let's talk about some career highlights for the man. 3 Pro Bowl selections in 1982, 1984, and in 1985. He was a first-team All-Pro in 1982, where he led the NFL in rushing during the strike-shortened season. Don't forget, I think it was around just under 800 yards for that season because of the strike. Regardless, he was inducted into the New York Jets Ring of Honor in 2011. Got to be honest with you guys, I watched football probably starting in 83, 84, 85, and this player, Freeman McNeil, I was in awe of, I'm not going to lie. We remember guys like Barry Sanders, said this before, Walter Payton, guys like that who had a little bit of wiggle to them. Freeman McNeil was in that category. Played a nice long career with the New York Jets, so I give him credit for that. He was the guy also that filed, one of the guys that filed the antitrust lawsuit that kind of shaped modern free agency into what it is today. You know, so not only was he a great New York Jets player, but he also was an advocate for players back then as well. But again, if you're a young kid growing up with football, you have that one or two guys that you love, that you always grew up watching and you admired the way they played and what they could do. Freeman McNeil, for me, was one of those guys. The other one, of course, was this guy right here, and that is Mo Lewis, one of my favorite New York Jets players of all time. But number 10, the great Freeman McNeil. So my number 9 player for the New York Jets is a guy who I think is really under talked about, undervalued by the franchise, but did a lot for the 7 years he played for the New York Jets. And he had 2 stints here, and that, of course, is Lavernius Coles.
Play fake this time. Pennington throws across the middle. That's complete inside the 20 to Lavernius Coles to the 16 and a first down.
Drafted by the Jets in the 3rd round overall, number 78 pick in the 2000 NFL draft out of Florida State. Talk about a guy who made huge catches. You know, I've said this before to people. He played that X receiver, that outside receiver, and normally those guys are about 6'2", 6'3", 220 or so. This is a guy who played that position at 5'11", 6 feet, and was a dominant force for the New York Jets. Played with body control, played with strength, would always go up and make difficult catches for this franchise. And I just think he was such an undervalued player while he was here. Let's talk about career statistics a little bit. Games played, 105. He had 459 receptions overall, 5,941 receiving yards. The guy was a touchdown machine, 37 touchdowns over that time frame with a yards per reception rate of 12.9. But let me give you some stats overall regarding the franchise and Lavernius Coles. He was the number 5 all-time for the New York Jets in receptions. He was number 5 all-time in receiving yards and number 5 all-time in receiving touchdowns. He had some memorable moments for this franchise, not just in the regular season, but also in the playoffs. We talk about that Monday Night Miracle game with Testaverde coming down, back 30-7 at one point in the 4th quarter and winning that football game. In the playoffs, that classic Green Bay Packers, New York Jets, that final game 16 that would propel the Jets to the AFC division winner and also get them into the playoffs. He had a monster game, as did everybody else in that game. But we don't give Lavernius Coles enough credit. Him and that X, Wayne Corbett in that slot, and then across from him, Santana Moss, another underutilized player when he was with the New York Jets. Just a tough dude. And to get him, in the 3rd round, 70th overall for the production he gave you over those 7 years, to me, he's at my number 9. So the next guy I want to talk about might be, I want to say, the best player at his position for the New York Jets. Whether you were a 3-4 linebacker, whether you were a 4-3 linebacker, this dude got the name the Hitman for a reason, and that's David Harris.
Somebody's got to make a play to stop this drive.
That last run, in fact, again, they pushed the pile for the first.
And the pass is picked off. It's picked off by David Harris, who gets away from Brady. What a turn of events. Now being chased down by Crumpler at the 10-yard line.
David Harris was drafted by the New York Jets, 47th overall in the 2nd round in the 2007 NFL Draft out of Michigan. David Harris has given the New York Jets not only 9 years of incredible play, but he has given us some of the most outstanding moments that we have seen as New York Jets fans, right? We all remember the one, of course, against the Patriots in the playoffs, the interception that kind of sealed the game for the New York Jets, or at least gave them the edge going in to go ahead and win that game. But I remember this dude more for run stop. And the New York Jets had one of the best run-stuffing defenses under Rex Ryan for the first couple of years. He was the linchpin of that defense, okay? The Jets played a base 3-4, but this dude was the man in the middle. He had Bart Scott next to him. Doesn't hurt to have an all-pro next to you, but this dude was, to me, one of my favorite Jets growing up. Drafting this dude in the 2nd round in 2007, there's a big thing out there with the New York Jets, how this may be the best 2nd-round pick the Jets have ever drafted in their franchise. And I kind of agree with that. I'm just going back and trying to remember some of these awful 2nd-round picks the Jets have had. David Harris really stands out. Regardless, let's talk about career statistics played from the Jets 2007 to 2016. 153 games played with 147 starts. He had 1,080 total tackles, 675 solo with 405 assists. 35 sacks, not really a sack guy unless they were blitzing, but again, guy who could definitely get downhill, make plays, and make tackles. 5 interceptions, of course, we know, with the one being the most important. 11 forced fumbles and 4 fumble recoveries. But check out some of these statistics you guys might have not known. He had elite run-stopping capability, all right? Listen to this. He recorded 9 consecutive seasons with 80-plus tackles. Ironman durability out of 160 possible regular season games over his 10-year tenure. He missed only 6 games due to injury. That's an incredible career while staying healthy. He holds a historic co-share of the NFL single-game record for most combined tackles, 24, and holds the standalone NFL record for most solo tackles in a game at 20. Unbelievable. Just listen to that stat. 20 tackles in a game is a solo tackle record in the NFL. 24 standalone combined tackles as well. He's a co-holder of that record. David Harris was an absolute freaking wrecking machine. All right, so we're at number 7, and we start to get higher on the list. We start talking about guys who have had incredible careers for the New York Jets, although being drafted by them. But the guy I want to talk about right now is a guy who played for this team for only 5 years, but had one of the most impactful careers in such a short time for this franchise that I had to put him on this list. And I think at the number 7 spot is really where he belongs, and that is Brad Smith.
Petrie on the kickoff. Brad Smith on the return. Smith to midfield. Smith could go, and he will. Touchdown Jets, 90 yards.
The guy who could do everything offensively for this team, and he was incremental to these 2000 teams under Rex Ryan. Unbelievable player, athleticism. Obviously, if you don't know this, he played quarterback in college. They converted him to a receiver with the New York Jets, and he did it all from quarterback play, receiver play, running back. They put him all over the field. He ran back kicks. I'm not too sure if he ran back punts. I don't think he did, but was an incredible kickoff returner. He was drafted by the New York Jets in the 4th round, 103rd overall in the 2006 NFL draft, and played 5 seasons with them. The dude was an absolute menace, okay? I want you to listen to some of these statistics, okay? He played 76 games for the New York Jets. That is it. 17 starts, believe it or not. 65 receptions, 557 receiving yards. He only had 2 receiving touchdowns, but he had 98 rushing attempts for 767 yards. Believe it or not, he threw 8 passes and completed 3 of them for 41 yards. But listen to these franchise highlights. And if you watch Brad Smith and you were a fan of the Jets during this time, you know how important he was to this team. During that time frame, the Jets went to 2 AFC championship games under Rex Ryan, and they only won 10 games one year and I think 11 the next, but they would have lost a bunch of those games if it wasn't for what Brad Smith did for them, okay? He was an elite kick returner. He returned 66 kickoffs for 1,841 yards and scored 2 touchdowns with the Jets. On December 27, 2009, against the Colts, he returned an opening second-half kickoff, 106 yards for a touchdown, which remains the longest play in New York Jets history. This dude did it all for the Jets for only 5 years, and they drafted him in the 4th round in 2006. The guy was incredibly impactful. You could put him anywhere on the field. I do remember maybe they put him on defense a play, maybe at safety to knock down the ball. That's how incredibly gifted an athlete this dude was. So to me, I had to put him on the list, and I think number 7 was the right spot. All right, so we're now at the 6th spot, and we're going to start getting to talk about some of the most important players in New York Jets history. And this guy is definitely that, but one thing I'll say is he was a me guy. There's no question in my mind that this player was a me player before he was a good teammate, and of course, about team winning. That, of course, is the great Mark Gastineau, drafted by the New York Jets in the 2nd round, 41st overall in the 1979 draft. Now, of course, he was drafted before I was born, but he played 10 seasons with the New York Jets. And if you know about the New York Jets, you know anything about their history and the New York Stock Exchange and the 4 guys who kind of built that defensive line and made that unit what it was, Mark Gastineau, of course, was one of those guys who really put the Jets on the map.
Remaining. Here's the ball game, folks. Here is Pagel back the pass. He's sacked. He fumbles. The ball rolls free. Barry Bennett picks it up.
Let's talk about career highlights and stats. He had a total of 107.5 career sacks with the New York Jets. That, to me, is a crazy number. We all know about the single season record he held for forever, and until, of course, Michael Strahan broke it with that bogus last sack. Regardless, that was an NFL record with 22 sacks in 1984. The guy could get after the passer. Mark Gastineau had a total of 5 Pro Bowl selections, 1981 to 1985, and was a 4-time first-team All-Pro. So as good as this dude was, like I said before, he was a me guy, but there's no question how talented he was and what he meant to the New York Jets, franchise. He was the NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 1982, his 3rd year in the league. He was inducted into New York Jets Ring of Honor in 2012. When we talk about the New York Sack Exchange, we can't, of course, not talk about Mark Gastineau, but we have to mention the 3 other guys that made up that unit, because when you have a nickname like that, and as good as these dudes played, with Marty Lyons and Abdul Salam and, of course, the great Joe Klecko, Mark Gastineau was that guy to go get the quarterback. There's no question about it. These other guys can get after it, especially Klecko, but when we talk about a guy that you just strictly go get the quarterback, Mark Gastineau was it. 2nd round pick, we could debate all day long, I think, who was the better player, him or David Harris. I think David Harris is a better teammate. I think David Harris played better in a team defense, and I think he was more overall important to the Jets' success. It's debatable, though, don't get me wrong, but Mark Gastineau, I think, has to be on this list for where he was picked, 41st overall in the 2nd round for the incredible career he had for this franchise. So we're finally into the second half of this list of the top 10 New York Jets best draft picks of all time. And the guy that I'm going to put at number 5, I remember him being drafted, and I've had this long, stint in my life where I've watched the NFL draft ever since I was a little kid. I never missed a draft. It's one of my favorite experiences that I've ever had, in my life. And now I share that with my kids. But the guy drafted here at number 5, I think it was a known thing that the Jets were going to take this player at number 4 overall in the 2006 NFL draft. And that, of course, is the Wall himself, D'Brickashaw Ferguson.
Being a top draft choice while hardened by veterans is no easy task, but Brick was up for the challenge. The Jets' offensive line during his tenure was defined by their physicality and a ground-and-pound rushing attack.
Now, you want to talk about an undervalued player, in my opinion, a guy who had one of the best Jets careers you will ever see. And some of the stats I'm going to throw at you, I don't think do this dude justice, because he was one of the best pass protectors there ever was in the NFL. Again, he was also on an offensive line in the, mid 2011, 2012, 2014 under Rex Ryan, having one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL at that time. So with that said, career statistics and overview, obviously one of the best offensive tackles in New York Jets history, played 10 years for them overall, 160 regular season games. So I'm going to throw a ridiculous stat out here for you for D'Brickashaw Ferguson. I'm sure you guys know this because you're all Jets fans listening to this thing. Okay. He started 7 games in the playoffs, including 2009 and 2010 in the AFC Championship game. But he also played 10,707 snaps out of 10,708 offensive snaps in his entire career. He only missed a single trick play snap on a lateral in 2008 where they pulled him off the field. The dude never missed a snap in his offensive freaking playing career. That is a stat you'll never see again in the NFL. How important this guy was to this team is so understated, okay? The dude was a freaking Iron Man. He missed 1 snap in his entire 10-year career only because they pulled him off the field for a trick play. The dude went to 3 Pro Bowls, okay? 2009, 2010, and 2011. In my opinion, probably should have went a few more. Franchise recognition, he was inducted into the New York Jets Ring of Honor in 2022. Never listed. I want to repeat this multiple times. The dude was never listed on a team injury report during his 10-year career. He was never on the injury list in 10 years. Not once. You know what I'm saying that is? That's crazy to me. He was never put on an injury report in 10 years. In a premier position in the NFL where dudes get nicked up on every play. They're constantly going full speed at other dudes with their helmets, with their heads, with their hands. And he's only number 5 on my list Again, they had some great moments under Brick. One of the best players in Jets history, does not get enough credit. He's only number 5 on my list because he was drafted number 4 overall in the first round. I think everybody knew coming out he's going to be a fantastic player. He also has a thin frame for a dude his size. He's not a big dude. He's obviously tall, but he wasn't a massive, offensive tackle. We see some of these guys now at 350, 340 playing left tackle. He was a slender offensive tackle, and what he did for this team over that 10-year run had to be put on the list, in my opinion. So I think you guys know who was going to be at this 4 spot. We talked about DeBrickashaw Ferguson at number 5. I think we have to talk about his cohort at number 4, his draft class mate, who was as equally good as Brick was. And that's, of course, is the great Nick Mangold, the late great Nick Mangold.
With the 29th choice in the 2006 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Nick Mangold, center from Ohio State.
I want to just retire as Nick Mangold, the football player. I want to retire as Nick Mangold, the New York Jet.
A force for the New York Jets, not only physically during his 11-year tenure, but also, I think, mentally. You want to talk about a guy who could set the line of scrimmage. You want to talk about a guy who helped his quarterbacks, a la Chad Pennington, a la Brett Favre, Mark Sanchez, so on and so forth. A guy who could set the protection for this team when a lot of quarterbacks struggle with that. He's the guy kind of step in here for this franchise and help them along get what needed to be done. Of course, Nick passed away a couple of years ago. And, to me, he was one of the guys that really stood out as soon as the Jets drafted him out of Ohio State. He was the 29th overall pick in the first round in the 2006 NFL draft. To take 2 guys in the same draft, one at number 4, one at number 29, who would become, Ring of Honor members. And of course, they both went into the Ring of Honor together, him and Brick, in 2022. So let's talk about Nick Mangold. Let's talk about his career. Let's talk about, the great human he was. He played 164 regular season games for the New York Jets and only played for this franchise. Also, like DeBrickashaw Ferguson, 164 starts, okay? Started from the get-go, day one, along with Brick. 7 playoff postseason appearances, 7 starts. 7 Pro Bowl selections, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2013, 2014, and 2015. An all-time great player for this team. He had 2 first-team All-Pros in 2009 and 2010. We could debate all day who was the better player for the New York Jets at center, Kevin Mawai, Nick Mangold, or Jim Sweeney. All 3 guys I remember watching in my football life. All 3 guys were huge for their team, and both, at least Mawai and Mangold, took their teams to the AFC Championship game. Both guys, I think, credited for turning this franchise around and from the doldrums and then kind of leading them back to where the heights for what this franchise has seen. So with that said, Nick had some incredible freaking stats here. Just to make the Pro Bowl 7 times is insane. He started every game in each of his first 5 NFL seasons. Just incredible. All rookie named to the PFWA All Rookie team in 2006. And like I said before, in the New York Jets Ring of Honor in 2022 with DeBrickashaw Ferguson. Now, when we talk about top 10 draft picks by a franchise, when we get to the top 3, they're usually like the best players that this franchise has ever had on their team. And that's, speaks volumes when we're talking about the 3 players that made my top 3 list. Now, we're going to go in and talk about this number 3, whether you have him at the 3 spot, whether you have him at the 2 spot, or even the number 1 spot. I think you have to have him in that top 3. And that, of course, is the great Joe Klecko.
Joe Klecko became the first defensive player in NFL history to make the Pro Bowl at 3 different positions, while he was the workhorse of the defense.
Another guy who was drafted before I was born in the 6th round overall in the 1977 NFL draft by the New York Jets. You want to talk about value? We want to talk about incredible value. This might be the most valuable pick. We talk about, Tom Brady. We talk about, Joe Montana. But outside of the quarterback position, to get a Hall of Famer, and I know it took Joe a long time to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and which was a travesty in itself. The dude is a top 3 New York Jet of all time, and he's number 3 on the top New York Jets draft pick. Like I said, drafted in the 6th round, 1977, 144th overall out of Temple University. Let's get into career stats and highlights. 155 total career games, 78 official career sacks, 78. Okay, that's a lot. Don't forget, Joe Klecko played inside, but he also played outside. So we compare him to Mark Gastineau, there's really no comparison. This dude could do it all. Led the NFL with 20.5 sacks, part of the famed, obviously, New York Jets sack exchange in the 1981 season. 2 years in the NFL, this dude led the NFL with sacks. 4 Pro Bowl selections, 2-time first-team All-Pros, and the 1981 Defensive Player of the Year. He's the only player in NFL history to make the Pro Bowl at defensive end, defensive tackle, and nose tackle. It's a travesty that this dude was not put in the Hall of Fame till 2023. Not only did he make the Hall of Fame, the New York Jets retired number 73 and placed him in the Ring of Honor. The New York Jets have not retired a ton of numbers. Joe Namath, Don Maynard, and the great Joe Klecko. That speaks volumes for the player this man was for this franchise. So my number 2 spot probably could have gone to Joe Klecko on a lot of people's lists, or it's going to go to this player we're going to talk about now. But I say that because it really depends on where you grew up watching New York Jets football. Was it the 60s or 70s, 70s or 80s, 80s, 90s, or the 2000s? I think you could slot either one of these 2 players at that 2 or 3 spot. But I grew up, I've been watching since the 80s. And why I'm putting this player at number 2 is because he is the best football player at his position that I have ever seen play, let alone for the New York Jets. And that, of course, is Darrelle Revis.
Romo buying time. Throws, it's intercepted. Intended for Bryant. Picked off by Revis. And the Jets have the ball back in Cowboy territory.
Darrelle Revis was drafted by the New York Jets in the 1st round of the 2007 NFL draft. But don't forget, the Jets held the 25th pick that year, right? They had to trade up to the number 14 spot with the Carolina Panthers to take the greatest cornerback, in my opinion, that have ever played the game, okay? Picked 14th overall, played with the Jets on 2 stints from 2007 to 2012 and 2015 to 2016. He has a franchise record, 112 pass defends in 108 regular season games. Remarkable, okay? He played 108 games, like I said. He had combined 388 tackles, 26 interceptions, okay? Interception return yards were over 400 yards. The one thing I'll say about Darrelle Revis, he didn't have a lot of interceptions, which maybe would bump him from the top cornerback spot overall as compared to Deion Sanders or somebody else. But to me, the way this dude played at the line of scrimmage, he had one of the greatest single 2 seasons, let's say 2 seasons overall, 2009, 2010, that you will see from any football player ever. He had 4 Pro Bowls with the Jets alone and 3 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New England Patriots. First team All-Pros, 3 with the Jets and 1 other with the New England Patriots. Now, we could talk about who is the best corner in football all day long. I'm going to say it's this man right here. And I'm going to prove to you with some of these stats that I'm going to give you right here. The dude had 9 fumble recoveries as well, okay? An all-time great player in any position, but I think, in my opinion, he's definitely a top 3 New York Jets player. The peak season in 2009, and this is my argument, and probably the argument any New York Jets fan is going to give you for Darrelle Revis. In 2009, he had 6 interception. That was a career high for him. Not a lot, okay? Not a crazy amount, but that year he had 6 interceptions, 31 pass defended, which was an NFL single season record, okay? Finished 2nd in AP Defensive Player of the Year voting and earned first team, of course, All-Pro honors. But that's just the beginning of the story for Darrelle Revis. Of course, we all know the receivers he stopped or he blanketed or he put on Revis Island. When you're getting commercials and you're saying that, nobody can get around you and they're calling you in the space you play on an island, you're an all-time great. Andre Johnson against the Houston Texans held him to 4 receptions for 34 yards. Randy Moss, the first game they played against the New England Patriots, 4 receptions for 24 yards. Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, Cincinnati Bengals, 0 receptions for 0 yards. Terrell Owens in his prime, maybe a little bit after, Buffalo Bills, 3 receptions for 13 yards. And of course, the great Reggie Wayne, the Colts, 3 receptions for 26 yards. When I say he had the greatest single season I have ever seen in my life from a player, allowed the Jets to get to the AFC Championship game that year, did things that normal cornerbacks couldn't do, played man almost nearly the entire year on some of the best receivers opposite him in the NFL. Not only that, in NFL history, and did what he did. This dude, to me, I don't think it's an argument. This dude is the number 1 cornerback to ever play this game. Forget interceptions, okay? Cornerbacks didn't want to throw to him, and when they did, they paid the price. All right, so we're finally at the top spot, and I think a lot of people would put this player at number 1. I actually really struggled putting this player at the top spot, only because I didn't grow up watching this player. You just hear the stories, right? You hear the stories about what he did. You hear the stories about bringing the only Super Bowl that he brought to the New York Jets franchise. But if you look at the numbers for what they are now, I find it hard to put him at the number 1 overall player in the Jets franchise. But I do understand how important he is to the franchise, what he did for the franchise, but not only that, more importantly, what he did for the NFL. Because don't forget, this player was drafted at a time where the NFL didn't exist.
But at an awards banquet in Miami 3 nights before the game, he boiled over.
I get up to the podium and a guy in the back of the room yells out, "Hey, Namath, we're going to kick your you-know-what." And that just, it was just... Now, wait a minute. I've been hearing that all week long. I got news for you, buddy. We're going to win the game, I guarantee it.
Joe Namath is the guy, and he was drafted in 1965 as the number 1 overall pick, but for the American Football League, okay? The NFL did exist, and then they kind of merged with the AFL, and the NFL is what it is today because of the New York Jets, because of the Jets winning Super Bowl III. For anybody who doesn't know this history, we had those first 2 Super Bowls of the AFL versus the NFL, but everybody always considered the AFL to be a secondary league to the NFL, and it wasn't until the Jets won Super Bowl III and Joe Namath guaranteed victory that it kind of brought about the idea that the American Football League was as good as the NFL, and therefore they merged, and now we have what we have today. But the great Joe Namath, the first overall pick in 1965. Not only that, Joe Namath was also drafted to the NFL 12th overall by the St. Louis Cardinals in 1965, and he chose to play in the AFL instead. That's why I talk about Joe Namath being an iconic figure, not just because of the guarantee, but what he did for football in general, the NFL. So obviously drafted out of the University of Alabama. He played 136 games for the New York Jets, threw for 27,057 yards, 170 touchdowns, and of course 215 interceptions. We talk about stats, and that's why I didn't want to put him at that top spot, because the stats were kind of mediocre. But for the time, I guess, maybe they were on par. There were definitely guys who actually had better numbers than him, right? He had a completion percentage of 50.1% overall. So we talk about, quarterbacks being over 65% nowadays, want to get to that 70%, range. Joe Namath had a career percentage rate of 50%. So passer rating of only 65.8. That didn't exist back then, but again, not a great passer rating for a quarterback. But regardless, he was 60 and 61 and 4 as a starter. So again, not even a great record, but what he did for the NFL, what he did by winning Super Bowl and guaranteeing a win of Super Bowl III is second to none for the New York Jets. So obviously came out with a guarantee. We've heard this story numerous times, how somebody said, everybody questioning him all week, how the Jets didn't stand a chance to win this game. And he came out and said, hey, you know what? Guess what? We're going to win this football game. And he did just that. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler, believe it or not. So 2-time AFL MVP as well. This is a crazy stat, okay? A crazy stat for the time. Became the first professional quarterback to pass for over 4,000 yards in a single season. How many quarterbacks we have now that pass for that amount? A lot, right? Dan Marino was the other guy in the 1980s who threw for that amount of yardage before it became kind of like a standard thing to do that in the NFL. But 4,007 yards in 1967. An amazing feat. So you want to talk about quarterback play, we could talk about the mediocreness of overall career-wise for Joe Namath, but when the lights were brightest, when the important decisions needed to be made, when he needed to be a leader for his team, I don't think there's anybody better than the great Joe Namath.